Alright, my name is Keith Moore, and this video is a presentation for my public speech class. Today I want to talk to you guys about the importance of having a self-evacuation rope with you in your gear. Do you want to be another firefighter fatality, or do you want to learn how having that evacuation rope may save your life one day? You know, I've done some self-study on this and realized that this is pretty new to the fire service as far as wanting to have this self-evacuation rope on your gear. It's probably been within the past 10-15 years that we've started looking at the utilization of this rope. So we're going to talk about basically the history of how this self-evacuation rope has come about in the fire service. We're also going to talk about the history of the rope and a couple of knots itself. So let's talk about the history in the fire service. It was a pretty significant event as far as self-evacuation that occurred on January 23rd, 2005. It's better known as Black Sunday for FDNY. That's where a fire occurred in a multi-story building, and 6 firefighters were trapped on the 4th floor. Several of those 5 firefighters wound up bailing out of the window on their own and falling to 4 stories. 2 of them died that day, but what's really significant is one of those firefighters had a self-evacuation rope, and by hanging on to the windowsill, utilized it to throw to an adjacent window to another fireman and allowed that fireman to be lowered to the ground. Even though he did fall a distance and sustain some injuries, he was able to be lowered to the ground. That firefighter that was in the windowsill then managed to clip his self-evacuation rope to one of the safety bars and lower himself down a significant ways before he fell. And both firefighters did sustain injuries, but they both lived that day. Now to date, 3 of those 6 firemen have died. Another one died of his injuries in 2011. So you can see the significance of having this, how it could possibly save your life. Now, as far as the history of the rope itself, we'll talk about 2 of the knots. Giving you an example here of how we may carry it in our gear. This is a bag that we could probably fit in one of our bunker gear pockets. Well, let's talk about the history of the knots themselves and how the knots are formed. The knot you see here is the figure 8 follow through. This knot would be utilized as a harness for you in this event. So basically you can think of yourself as what you see here, this object that is tied around. As far as the history of the figure 8 follow through, it's not very well known when it originated. Now let's talk about the next knot that you may utilize, and that's a bowline. Now the bowline knot does have some history where it was mentioned around 1691 in the works of John Smith, a sea grammer. Furthermore, about its history is it's used in maritime as one of the maritime knots, and it was utilized to tie a sail down to one of the cross members of a sail ship to pull it tight. So let's demonstrate how we would utilize these knots and the rope for self-evacuation. So what I have here are a couple of items: the rope, a carabiner, and an axe. This rope is not the length of rope that is recommended. The length of rope that's recommended is about 40 feet. This is shorter for just demonstration purposes only. You can see on one end I have a figure 8 follow through tied with a carabiner, and on the other end, about midways, I have another figure 8 tied with the running end left open. This is designed for if I get in a situation where I need to self-evacuate out of a multi-story building. I can take my tool, I can punch a hole in the wall, and I can take the end that has a carabiner on it and the figure 8 follow through, slide it through my tool so it gives me a good anchor point. And that hole that you made in the wall right by the windowsill, you can slide the entire handle down into the wall, thus creating you a solid anchor. This allows you the rest of the additional rope to self-evacuate and rappel outside of the windowsill, outside of the structure. Now the other end of the rope here, you're going to take the tied figure 8 in your left hand, be your right hand, depending on if you're left-handed or right-handed. Take the running end of the rope, go around your body, and you're going to do the figure 8 follow through. So you're just going to follow it back through the figure 8. Now this knot is known to be a safe knot, not to slip, and is able to handle large loads. This would give you a harness for self-rescue, okay? You'll be able to slide right up underneath your arms so you can hang on to lower yourself down. Now, you may not be able to make it all the way to the ground, but this would get you outside of the hazardous environment that you're in if you're unable to evacuate out of the structure through the means that you entered. Now, the other rope I have here, we have the bowline tied around the carabiner. Now if you don't have a carabiner, you can still utilize just the bowline itself to slide around your tool, choice, around the handle, and it creates that anchor point. Once you put the tool inside the wall, it will hold. Later on we'll demonstrate this with our training props to give you a better idea of how to utilize this self-evacuation rope. So in conclusion, the goal is to provide a more safer environment for us and to make sure that we're able to go home at the end of shift, on every shift. I hope you take the time to always practice every training drill that we have, and especially those that may save your life. Thank you for taking the time to be with me today in this class.